know. So.
It looks quite dark.
But yeah, unfortunately, the lighting in here is not good. If I open the window, it'll be washed out. So,
but fortunately, you are not based in Florida, right?
I'm not in Florida. No, I think it was actually. Hopefully, the storm wasn't as bad as everyone was predicting. We have a lot of employees there, and so they were. A lot of people evacuated, but I think it was fortunately not too bad. So, but it's scary.
Yeah, it is. Where are you based? In Seattle, or where are you?
I'm in Seattle, but I'm in Los Angeles today. So I'm at another conference speaking later today. So hopping on to do this, and but yeah, had to travel for the day. So hopefully the background is okay.
A very much asked person, right?
Yeah, I seem to be the face of the company these days at all these events. So it's fun to go around and talk to great people and talk about all the fun stuff we're doing with partnerships and creators and everything else. So excited to talk about that today.
And you are the Chief Development Officer at Acceleration Partners, right?
Yeah, I think my title's I think it's actually chief strategist. It doesn't really matter. I do, for those folks on here watching, I lead sort of strategic initiatives, go to market strategy. I basically built our influencer business over the past 4 years, and so that's kind of my role within the organization.
Very much looking forward to your presentation, and apologies for the short delay of 3 minutes. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. Should we get started then?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen again. Here we go. Okay, great. So is this showing up for everybody, Demi? Just because I can't see you anymore. Sorry, I'm just on a laptop. So is this working?
Yeah, everything's working.
Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. So thank you everybody for joining today. So I'm John. I'm AP's chief strategist, and I'm here to talk about how to sort of maximize everything you're doing with creators and building creator communities. It's obviously a hot topic in the marketing industry these days, and we built a really interesting and robust sort of influencer practice over the past few years, I just mentioned previously. And I've sort of led the development of that over the past few years. But really want to talk about kind of the phase that we're in the influencer market. We're sort of moving from what I would consider to be sort of legacy influencer work to really version 2.0, and we'll talk through some of the changes in that, and then really dive into how brands are really maximizing the value and the strength of creators to build communities and to really harness that collective voice to drive meaningful results for brands. So just a quick bit about Acceleration Partners. We're the largest partner marketing agency in the world. We're fully global. We have 325 employees. We're in, across 40 countries, 200 plus clients. We traditionally come from the affiliate space, and most folks I'm sure on this in this conference are familiar with us in the affiliate world. But we've actually developed a really robust influencer practice over the past 4 years. Currently we're working with 50 plus clients. We have really success with them in terms of the campaigns that we run. And as I mentioned, 4 years ago we didn't do any influencer work. Today we're managing north of $100 million in spend with creators across all the campaigns that we're running. We've started to win some prestigious awards, and so what we're doing is working, and wanted to share some of those results and sort of strategies with everybody here, so you can think about how to potentially implement this sort of new form of creator marketing within your organizations. Again, some of the brands we're working with and building these programs out for are really big D2C companies. We also work with some massive retail brands. We're building creator communities for them, like Target, CVS, Lowe's in the US. And so a pretty wide range of experience in this market, and definitely work with tens of thousands of different types of creators across this sort of full different parts of the industry. So really what I want to talk about is this evolution of influencer marketing to kind of influencer marketing 2.0. I think we're in this really interesting shift in the industry, where we've gone from this sort of legacy way of working with creators to really where I think things are going, which is a much more holistic approach to working with influencers. And I want to just share some of the sort of differences that we're seeing on the ground with our clients we're working with. So, historically, the way that creator campaigns have been run and brands have worked with influencers, most of the time they were really transactional and one-off campaigns, right? A brand would decide to partner with an influencer. They would do an Instagram post. They would do a reel. Maybe it would be a TikTok post. Maybe it was sponsorship of a YouTube video. But it was really oriented around doing sort of one-off campaigns. There wouldn't be any sort of length or long-term partnership involved there. And from an influencer perspective, their motive was to really kind of get as many of these deals as possible. They were trying to push the brand out to the audience, but there really wasn't any sort of like thought about how do we make this a long-term partnership? How do we evolve this? Creators have historically always been paid just on a flat fee. So it was a set flat fee for the content development. The measurement and sort of how brands evaluated how successful these campaigns were based on things like views or impressions, right? Just the total number of people that actually saw that content, the number of likes that a post got, the sentiment of the comments, right? How is the audience responding to that content? Or they looked at other metrics called like EMV is one that's used in the influencer world a lot. It's basically like a CPM sort of metric. It's really oriented around visibility, reach, awareness, those sorts of things as the primary driver and sort of measurement of campaigns. The folks running these efforts with creators were primarily led by the brand team, maybe PR team, maybe a social team. But really, in the organization, these were parts of the organization were focused on driving awareness and branding, right? And in terms of measuring, revenue or actual impact of these campaigns, little to none, right? We work with companies that were spending tens of millions of dollars a year with influencers with zero accountability to the actual revenue that these campaigns were delivering. So really, again, the focus historically has been on reach, awareness, branding, not really tasked with measuring and understanding efficacy of campaigns. Where we're going, which is version 2.0, which is where we see leading brands kind of embracing and adopting to the market, is instead of one-off partnerships that are really transactional, they're focusing on long-term, mutually beneficial relationships and partnerships, right? So the idea here is to sort of foster a community very similar to how you have built communities of affiliates with influencers, right? So it's predicated on building lasting relationships that have consistent content over time. They lean into developing this community of creators that they can work with in a ton of different ways. There's still ability to work with them in sort of one-off flat fee types of engagements, but also for a ton of other ways in which they sort of dive into and develop relationships long term. Compensation models have moved away from, again, only being flat fee based to hybrid engagements where you might pay flat fees to influencers, but also complement that with a commission on the back end to incentivize the creator to drive ultimately what you're looking to deliver, which is revenue and performance. Or oftentimes we have, again, some of our larger brands that are doing performance only based engagements with thousands of creators where they have the ability to earn a commission at any point by posting about the brand or posting about the brand's products. And sort of you let them kind of earn from an always on perspective. Creators have really embraced this as they've sort of learned about the additional revenue stream of commission models, right? They sort of treat it that way. So they will always take brand deals that are flat based and are offering a flat fee, but they're leaning into the ability to earn from a commission structure. And so they see it as an alternative revenue stream. So you're getting widespread adoption of influencers. And it's really different than what it was even like 2 years ago when we tried to do commission-based campaigns. Maybe 2 years ago, you would get declined by 99% of influencers that you talk to. But nowadays, they're all very eager to do those sorts of deals because they understand the impact and performance. The budgets have shifted like radically from the traditional brand teams to performance marketing teams or acquisition or growth teams within the organizations that we partner with. So we have a number of clients that we're spending, again, $10 million plus with influencers. And it started where we would have, initially maybe a few $100,000 was given to the performance marketing team to try to figure out if they could do influencer work that was actually driving customer acquisition and revenue. And very quickly, once success was seen with those campaigns, a massive amount of that budget shifted, and it's more like 90% goes to the performance team and maybe 10% sticks with the legacy brand and PR teams these days. So we've seen a massive shift to sort of growth and acquisition focused creator work. And obviously with that, like heavy focus of these campaigns is to measure revenue impact, the overall performance of what we're seeing, and really understanding, what is the lift of the brand for these campaigns, again, as opposed to really a branding exercise of what it used to be. Doing this is not easy. We hear consistently from clients, pretty much uniformly across the board, these three main sticking points and challenges of doing creator work, right? So the first one is that it's just a ton of work. Anyone that has worked with influencers and done any sort of campaign knows that it's very time consuming and it is manual. And while there are amazing systems out there that help automate some elements of this process, the exercise of going and sourcing influencers, engaging with them, onboarding them to the platform that you might be using to manage these campaigns, educating them about the brand, developing creative briefs, negotiating with them from a pricing perspective if you're doing any sort of flat fees or anything like that, reviewing content before it goes live, doing post-mortem analysis once those campaigns have completed. It's just a ton of work, right? So what we're seeing is a means to sort of support that, is that you need to have teams in place to manage these relationships. Again, it's very similar to the affiliate model. You can't just sort of create an influencer program and invite people to join it and expect to drive a bunch of revenue. You really have to sort of foster and nurture relationships. And so that's what we've done with a number of our clients, is just really kind of make sure that we're building those relationships from a long-term perspective. A second challenge is, brands want to kind of shift from, again, this branding and awareness world into more of a performance-based world. It's really difficult to measure these campaigns and understand what the actual lift in performance is from them. And so, again, if you're anyone familiar with influencer work, typically it's on Instagram or on TikTok. Those platforms aren't natively adept at providing a link to click out to, so that you can measure it in the way that you would measure maybe an affiliate campaign on a last click basis. So you have to do other things to ensure that you're tracking. And so what we typically do with our clients is we run these programs through the affiliate channel. So we're using affiliate links and allowing creators to track and measure their campaigns through that. Whether we're paying them a commission or not, we're always using an affiliate link so that we can understand the revenue impact of the campaigns. We'll also use things like promo codes or voucher codes that allow us to capture and measure those campaigns. And then we do a ton of other stuff like brand lift studies, or purchase intent studies that we survey up to audiences that have seen creator content. And so we can get a larger understanding of how those campaigns are affecting overall consumer behavior. The third is that you can do this sort of stuff on a one-off basis with a handful of creators. It's really, really difficult to do it at scale if you don't have the right technical infrastructure in place to support these campaigns. So, again, historically, the way that brands worked with creators, a lot of times it would be managed through Excel spreadsheets or Google Docs or something like that. It's really, really, really difficult to do that sort of work with hundreds or thousands of creators in many of our clients' examples without the right sort of infrastructure in place. And so we partner with leading SaaS platforms that have really built out the enablement elements of these campaigns to allow you to manage creators in a scalable way. And so the industry is kind of moving in that direction, which is fantastic. And we're fortunate to work with some amazing partners that enable those sorts of campaigns. So getting the right technical infrastructure in place is really important as well. In terms of the types of creators that we work with and how we kind of allocate budget and think about our sweet spot in terms of where we're going to engage with creators, we actually focus more on what we consider to be mid-tier influencers, and they're the most impactful for brands in terms of campaigns we develop for them. There's a lot of talk about harnessing the power of micro creators, and while they're really fantastic, The challenge is that someone with 10,000 followers, unfortunately, is just not going to be anywhere near as impactful as someone with 100,000 or 200,000 followers, right? So that's kind of the mid-tier level that we really focus on. We quantify that as somewhere between 50,000 and 250,000 followers. And again, depending on the platform and the complexity of the creator, that can vary. But like most of our investment and time and relationship building kind of goes into that mid tier. We certainly do test and spend a decent amount of money and time with macro creators, folks that are going to be above that 250,000 follower count, because some of them can be massively impactful in terms of their overall performance. We work with a bunch of creators that have learned how to drive revenue and customer acquisition through their campaigns, and so they're very much on demand from the brands that we work with, and they've kind of built their audience to really resonate and respond to content they develop, and so we still spend a decent amount of money with them. And then obviously the smaller creators can be really important in their own smaller communities they've developed, in terms of driving engagement and revenue. And we certainly will invest there, but it's not the sole focus for kind of what we're doing. And that's maybe a little bit different than a lot of the industry talk. Again, what we've just seen to work is that those smaller folks are important, and they can potentially be used for other things outside of just driving revenue. But ultimately, they're not going to be that impactful just because they have a smaller follower size. The other thing that we think about is consistency of exposure, right? You don't want to work with influencers and do, again, these sort of one-off engagements. It really doesn't drive the type of performance you're looking for. And audiences need to see consistent exposure over time, in order to really end up buying into whatever the product or brand is that you're pushing. So ultimately, what we're trying to do with any influencer that we onboard, we try to get them to basically do 3 or 4 posts over a multi-month period. So 2 or 3 months, we're looking for 3 or 4 posts, and that's kind of what we coach our influencers on when we onboard them to programs. We have strong call to actions in all the content they develop as well, and that's really important. You can't just talk about the brand and not have some sort of motivator to the audience to take an action at that point. So oftentimes that's inclusive of some sort of promo code or a sale, or maybe this is a brand new product or it's a limited release. We're going to be trying to have something that's developed in the content that is tied to ultimately getting the consumer to do something at that point, which is ultimately we're trying to get them to go and buy what we're doing. And so we'll look at the engagement rate of those posts. We'll look at the revenue, the performance, the clicks, all those sorts of metrics. And as we find winners within those pieces of content that we develop, we're going to go and reinvest with those leading creators that have actually generated revenue, generated performance we're looking for. We're going to look to scale that out. If we see lookalike audiences from those influencers, we're going to go try to find more that kind of look like them and have similar audiences. And so it's a constant sort of evolution and repetition of this process. Again, very similar to building an affiliate program. You're going to try to optimize relationships and scale and find similar partners and sort of grow the program that way. And we take the same sort of approach with working with influencers. One thing I would note for everyone that is maybe thinking about developing a more performance-based influencer program or launching one or starting to work with creators to begin with, we say that you're not going to really see meaningful results for the first 6 months, right? This is a long-term commitment, right? You can't kind of come in and think that you're going to work with a bunch of influencers and in month 1 you're going to see massive results and lift, right? This is a long-term investment. So any clients that we're working with, it's at least 6 months to really start seeing performance and the metrics that you're looking for. And so we tell and coach our clients to expect that this is, again, something that you have to build over time. We consider influencer work and this sort of development, this community development, kind of like SEO, and it takes a long time to develop, but ultimately is incredibly rewarding and valuable for brands that we're working with. Some examples just to showcase, what we're talking about here and prove that this is not, just hypothetical. A couple examples of, I think, from our target program that we built over the past couple of years. This is a creator, Goods. They only have 130,000 followers, so they're not enormous, but they're decently sized. But this post that they developed on Instagram ended up generating almost $15,000 in revenue. It had really good reach for their audience size, really good engagement rate. And so, this is a real world example of, sizable revenue that's being delivered from a creator from a single post. And here's another one from Stephanie Silver. And she has close to 500,000 followers. She's a little bit bigger, but again, she drove 30,000 revenue from a single post that was, again, highly engaging to her audience. It was really resonated well with them, and drove meaningful revenue that is impactful for the business. And so we have thousands of these types of creators working with a brand like Target. They're really driving a ton of performance for them. So we talk a lot about the organic side of influencer work, and those examples that I just showed you were creator posting, and again, just the audience that they have following them, engaging with it. But when we coach brands about how to think about the influencer campaigns, we want them to look at things holistically, right? And we want them to look at the value they can get out of this content from creators that goes beyond just the organic reach of their campaigns. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that, right? So the content that's being developed can be used in a multitude of different ways. Again, you have the organic reach and what that develops from the audience that's following that creator, but there's a ton of different ways where you can use that content. You can take that content that's developed, that UGC, you can negotiate with the creator, and you can use that on site, right? A lot of our brands that we work with take creator content and they use it on product reviews. They use it on site for testimonials. They use it for things like that. And that's massively impactful in terms of increasing conversion rate. It can be a really big boost. And so if you think of maybe a piece of creator content that lifts conversion rate on a product by 2%, you want to factor that into your overall ROI of your influencer campaign. So you understand, if I'm using this content and it improves the overall site conversion, that's a massive lift, right? So even if you paid that creator $10,000 to develop that content, but it's impacting the business in a substantial way, we try to coach brands to think about things from that perspective. The other way that this content is really used in our world is through sort of UGC repurposing. So again, the content that influencers develop, brands either take that content and they license it and they use it for their own paid media efforts through paid social, or they do what we call amplification, and otherwise known as dark posting or whitelisting, where you're essentially boosting the actual creator's handle and that content through paid social to audiences that you're going after. And that's used to drive basically customer acquisition. Again, the whole concept here is that you're boosting a piece of content that's been developed by a creator across Instagram stories or reels. Anyone that's been on Meta has seen this a lot. It's picking up a lot of velocity on TikTok as well. But instead of an ad being shown from the brand social handle, it's actually from a creator, and it looks like someone that you might follow, or maybe you are actually following that creator, and it is shown as an ad. It's less intrusive than a traditional sort of paid media ad, and so you get higher response rates and engagement rates from consumers, and ultimately, sort of a better experience from a consumer perspective when they see that type of engagement. So we spend a lot of money with amplifying sort of winning content that has performed well from an organic perspective, to make sure that we're getting the right message in front of the right person at the right time. So it's really valuable from that perspective. And so as we build these creator communities, ultimately what happens is you're onboarding hundreds or thousands of partners. You get this creative flywheel effect, is what we'd like to call it, right? So you're essentially, you're seeding, contracting, and onboarding creators. They're generating content across social channels. We kind of pick and choose the best performing assets from that, and we turn those assets into paid media ads. We launch those via the social platforms, and we'll find winners within those tests that we drive, and scale them massively. And ultimately, what we've seen in the market is that this sort of amplified content, it typically has a lower CPM, right? Because you're buying through the creator's handle as opposed to the brand, so it's cheaper to actually buy that inventory. But the engagement rate is 20 to 30% higher. And ultimately what this results in, especially with brands that are spending a lot of money in paid social, when we do this sort of amplified work with creators, what we see is that it outperforms the paid social team dramatically. And so the budget from paid social will get shifted towards this creator work that we're doing really rapidly. And so it's really interesting to sort of see how that ends up performing. So again, we take this holistic approach of how do you maximize the value you're getting out of creator work. This is one of the ways in which most leading brands are really leaning into things by engaging with creators in this way to, again, develop this content and really kind of maximize their return on what they're getting. So just some questions to ask for anyone that's thinking about creator work internally. If you are doing it, maybe you're you have another team within the company that's doing it, but really just trying to kind of figure out, how are you working with creators now? Is it one-off promotions? Is it those sort of standalone engagements? Is there an ongoing strategy? Are you leveraging that UGC? Are you using it in paid media? Are you amplifying content? Really kind of dig in there and understand what's going on. Are you leaning into the performance elements of creator work? Are you really tracking, measuring revenue or performance, or is it really just a branding exercise? If so, there's probably a really big opportunity for you to kind of dig in there and see if there's ways in which you can build a more performative type of creator campaign. And then also, one thing we tell our clients to ask and explore as they're thinking about this is like, what's the one point of feedback you would get from influencers, right? If you are doing creator campaigns, I think it's often lost in the conversation, right? Brands think about their ideal sort of program they want to build, but they don't actually engage with their community initially of influencers that might want to partner with them and understand, how they would want to work with the brand. And oftentimes when we have those conversations, creators are very open, again, to these more commission-based campaigns. They want to have a long-term relationship. So really think about it from the creator's perspective as well. And that's really critical. So, thank you again for listening to me chat here. If anyone has any questions or they want to reach out to me directly, my email is on the screen, and you can always find us at accelerationpartners.com. But hopefully this was interesting for everybody to take a look at.
Thank you very much, John. We like the presentation very, very much, to the point, very nice storytelling, right? And very insightful, right? We are running out of time, but I would like to ask one or two questions, right? I like the way you presented the evolution, right, of influencer of content creators, right, from 1.0 to 2.0. However, there are also different voices regarding that, right, saying that influencers or content creators should operate independently from CPA media or from affiliate marketing, right? Setting the focus on creativity, right, rather on being Salesforce. What is your opinion on that?
I think it depends on the brand that they're working with and what the brand objectives are, right? There are plenty of brands that will work with creators who want to, again, be creative. They want to tie into the latest trends. They want to tie into the latest trend on TikTok and whatever is most popular this week, right? And develop content around that. It's a different type of engagement and a different type of content than maybe something that is aimed at driving customer acquisition. So there are influencers that can do that, and they can demand those premium rates from brands, and brands will line up all day long and pay them. The number of influencers that are able to get those sorts of deals is shrinking because brands are not continuing to invest in that capacity like they were like 2 or 3 years ago. And again, the influencer industry is going to be $27 billion, I think, in 2025. Enormous amount of investment, but we are seeing a really radical shift, again, from just brands splashing money around to any creator to really trying to, even if they're going to spend a ton of money, they want to understand the impact of those campaigns. And not to be said, you can still do very creative work, but that work can drive revenue and performance. I think the element here is that like you want to track that and measure it. And so if I'm talking to an influencer, and I've talked to many of them, they're really massive. Even if your focus is brand awareness, you want to measure brand sentiment and those sort of elements of content, you still want to also be able to measure revenue impact. It's not one or the other, right? It's really both, right? The creator work is branding, it is awareness, it is all those things are really valuable, but it can drive meaningful revenue for clients. And so if you are a creator and you can do both of those things, then you're going to get paid a boatload of money, on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and let me finish our conversation, your presentation with my last question. You have been mentioning how hard it is to manage influencer marketing, right? It's hard to scale. It's a lot. It's very manually work, right? Are we not provoking the revival of long tail, right? Which has threats and opportunities?
Yeah, I think you are, and again, I talked about a little bit about how we think about allocating budget, and investment, and I think that that sort of approach there, the long tail, the sort of micro, smaller creators, um, just in terms of our time when we think about managing campaigns, we're not going to spend as much time on the long tail, but it is impactful, right? So Target, for example, right? We have 50,000 influencers in that program. We spend most of our time working with 200 of them who are really big creators. And when we do campaigns, they move the needle and they're impactful. That doesn't mean that the other 48,000, 800 of them, 49,800 aren't delivering meaningful content, revenue, and performance to the brand. They're just not managed from a direct capacity because you just don't have time, right, to manage that many partners. So they have access to the ability to create content at any given point they want to. And it is similar, I think, to the sort of like long tail approach of how you might manage affiliate relationships, right? And the recruitment, the activation, the onboarding, it's very similar to how you would manage an affiliate program. And the way that we do that is it is scaled, right? So it's sort of one-to-many communication. It's developing coaching material, onboard material that can be distributed to everyone, so you're not doing one-on-one sort of communication with them. And very much so, right? So those creators that we're working with in that capacity are long tail, and like affiliate, right? Sometimes they start to become meaningful, right? They get bigger, right? Their audience size develops, they become a larger creator, and we have this sort of community that we built up, and we're able to kind of farm from that over time, right? So as those influencers get larger, we're able to then go and potentially partner with them in other ways outside of maybe just a commission only sort of approach.
Good. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your time. Stay safe.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks very much.